What if I told you that the most groundbreaking experiment in the history of science has proven that you create your reality through the simple act of observation? What if the reason your life looks the way it does isn't because of circumstances, genetics, or luck, but because your consciousness is actively collapsing infinite possibilities into the specific reality you're experiencing right now? In the next 30 minutes, I will reveal how the observer effect, one of the most rigorously tested phenomena in quantum physics, proves that consciousness is not a byproduct of reality, but the creative force that brings reality into existence. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Einstein called this discovery spooky, why it terrified the scientific establishment, and how you can consciously use this knowledge to create the reality you desire. This isn't New Age philosophy or positive thinking. This is hard science validated in thousands of experiments across multiple decades. The implications are so profound that they change everything we thought we knew about the nature of existence. The experiment that shattered reality. To understand how you create your reality, we need to start with the most crucial experiment in the history of science: the double-slit experiment. This deceptively simple setup has revealed truths about the nature of reality that are so profound they've forced us to reconsider what we mean by existence itself completely. The experiment begins with a basic setup: a light source, a barrier with two parallel slits, and a detection screen behind the barrier. When light passes through this apparatus, it creates an interference pattern on the screen, alternating bands of light and dark that can only be explained if the light behaves like a wave, passing through both slits simultaneously and interfering with itself. This wave behavior isn't surprising when dealing with obvious waves like water or sound. But something extraordinary happened when scientists began firing individual photons, single particles of light, through the apparatus one at a time. Even individual photons created the same interference pattern, as if every single particle was somehow passing through both slits at once and interfering with itself. This discovery was revolutionary. But what happened next changed everything we thought we knew about reality. When scientists placed detectors at the slits to observe which path each photon took, the interference pattern disappeared completely. The moment observation was introduced, the photons began behaving like classical particles, each going through only one slit. Observation changed the nature of reality at the most fundamental level. When unobserved, photons existed in what physicists call superposition, a state where they simultaneously took all possible paths. When observed, this superposition collapsed into a single, definite path. This phenomenon, known as the observer effect, has been replicated with electrons, atoms, and large molecules. The same result occurs every time. Observation changes the fundamental nature of what's being observed. The implications are staggering. Reality at the quantum level doesn't exist in a definite state until consciousness observes it into being. The consciousness connection. The observer effect reveals something profound about the relationship between consciousness and reality. In the classical worldview, consciousness was seen as a passive observer of an independent objective reality. But quantum physics has revealed that consciousness is not separate from reality. It's the creative force that brings reality into existence. This isn't just a theoretical concept. The observer effect demonstrates that the very act of conscious observation collapses quantum possibilities into experienced reality. Your consciousness doesn't simply perceive reality. It creates it at the most fundamental level. The implications extend far beyond the laboratory. If consciousness shapes reality at the quantum level, and quantum processes underlie all physical phenomena, then consciousness is actively involved in creating every aspect of your experienced reality. Your thoughts, expectations, and observations aren't just mental events. They're creative forces that influence the probability of different outcomes manifesting in your life. This understanding transforms the entire concept of personal responsibility. You're not a victim of circumstances or a passive observer of events happening to you. You're an active participant in the ongoing creation of your reality through the creative power of your consciousness. The ancient mystics understood this principle intuitively. They taught that consciousness is the fundamental creative force of the universe, and that by changing consciousness, you change reality. Modern quantum physics has now provided scientific validation for this ancient wisdom. The measurement problem and the role of consciousness. The observer effect is part of what physicists call the measurement problem. The question of how and why quantum superposition collapses into definite states. This problem has puzzled scientists for nearly a century because it requires consciousness as a fundamental component of physical reality. In the quantum world, particles exist in superposition until measured. But what constitutes a measurement? Is it the interaction with a detector? Or does it require conscious observation of the detector's results? This question goes to the heart of the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like the Copenhagen interpretation, suggest that consciousness plays a fundamental role in collapsing the wave function. Others, like the many worlds interpretation, propose that all possibilities occur in parallel universes. Regardless of interpretation, the observer effect demonstrates that observation has a measurable impact on physical reality. The practical implications are profound. If consciousness influences quantum processes, and quantum processes underlie all physical phenomena, then your state of consciousness directly affects the probability of different outcomes manifesting in your life. This isn't mystical speculation, it's a logical consequence of well-established quantum mechanical principles. This understanding provides a scientific foundation for meditation, visualization, and intention setting. These aren't just psychological exercises. They're technologies for influencing the quantum field through consciousness. When you change your mental state, you change the probability patterns, determining what manifests in your reality. Beyond the laboratory, the observer effect in daily life. While the observer effect is most clearly demonstrated in controlled laboratory conditions, its principles operate throughout your daily experience. Every moment of conscious awareness is an observation that influences the reality you experience. Consider how your expectations shape your experiences. When you expect to have a good day, you're more likely to notice positive events and opportunities. You're more likely to encounter challenges and obstacles when you expect difficulties. This isn't just psychological bias, the observer effect in your daily life. Your consciousness constantly observes and interprets the quantum field of possibilities surrounding you. The thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, and the beliefs you hold all influence which possibilities collapse into your experienced reality. You're not just observing your life, you're actively creating it through the quality of your consciousness. This understanding explains why people with similar circumstances can have vastly different life experiences. It's not just about external conditions. It's about the consciousness through which those conditions are observed and interpreted. Two people can observe the same situation and create different realities through the quality of their observation. The observer effect also explains why changing your perspective can instantly change your experience. When you shift from seeing yourself as a victim to seeing yourself as a creator, you're not just changing your attitude, you're changing the quantum field of possibilities available to you. This shift in consciousness opens up new potential realities that weren't accessible from your previous state of awareness. The quantum field of infinite possibility. To understand how you create your reality, you must understand the nature of the quantum field. At the most fundamental level, reality exists as a field of infinite possibility, what physicists call the quantum vacuum or zero-point field. This field contains all potential realities in superposition, waiting to be collapsed into experience through observation. Your consciousness acts like a tuning fork in this field of possibility. The frequency of your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs determines which possibilities resonate with your consciousness and become more likely to manifest. When you maintain a consistent state of consciousness over time, you create coherent patterns in the quantum field that increase the probability of corresponding experiences manifesting in your life. This is why sustained focus and emotional coherence are powerful for creating change. When your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are aligned around a particular outcome, you make a strong, coherent signal in the quantum field. This coherence increases the probability that the quantum possibilities matching your consciousness will collapse into your experienced reality. The field responds to the quality of your consciousness, not just the content of your thoughts. A calm, centered state of knowing is more potent than excited, hoping, or desperate wanting. Observing from a state of inner peace and certainty creates the optimal conditions for positive possibilities to manifest. Understanding the quantum field also explains why gratitude and appreciation are so transformative. When you feel grateful for what you have, you observe your current reality from a state of abundance and appreciation. This state of consciousness attracts more experiences that match the frequency of gratitude and abundance. The science of conscious creation. The observer effect provides a scientific framework for understanding how consciousness creates reality. This isn't about wishful thinking or positive affirmations. It's about understanding and applying the fundamental principles that govern the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. The first principle is that consciousness is primary. In the quantum worldview, consciousness isn't produced by matter. Matter is created by consciousness. Your awareness is not separate from the reality you observe. It's the creative force that brings that reality into being. The second principle is that observation is creation. Every moment of conscious awareness is an act of creation. You're not passively observing a pre-existing reality. You're actively participating in the ongoing creation of reality through the quality of your observation. The third principle is that coherence amplifies creation. When your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are aligned, you create coherent patterns in the quantum field that increase the probability of corresponding realities manifesting. Coherence is more potent than intensity. A calm, steady state of knowing is more creative than excited, emotional force. The fourth principle is that consistency creates momentum. The quantum field responds to sustained patterns of consciousness over time. Occasional positive thoughts have minimal impact, but consistent states of consciousness create cumulative effects that can dramatically alter your reality. These principles provide a practical framework for conscious creation. By understanding how consciousness interacts with the quantum field, you can learn to create reality deliberately rather than accidentally. Practical applications of the observer effect. Understanding the observer effect isn't just intellectually fascinating. It provides practical tools for creating positive change in your life. Knowing that your consciousness shapes reality, you can learn to use this power consciously and deliberately. Conscious observation practice. The first application involves developing the skill of conscious observation. Most people observe their reality unconsciously, reacting automatically to whatever appears in their experience. Conscious observation means becoming aware of how you're observing and choosing to observe from states of consciousness that support your desired outcomes. Begin by noticing the quality of your observation throughout the day. Are you observing from fear or love? From lack or abundance? From victimhood or empowerment? The quality of your observation directly influences the reality you create. Practice shifting your observation consciously. When you notice yourself observing from a limiting state, gently move to a more empowering perspective. This isn't about denying what you see. It's about choosing the consciousness through which you observe it. Quantum meditation techniques. Meditation becomes a powerful tool for conscious creation when you understand the observer effect. Instead of trying to empty your mind, use meditation to practice observing from desired states of consciousness. Sit quietly and bring to mind a reality you'd like to create. Instead of visualizing it as something you want to achieve in the future, observe it as a possibility already in the quantum field. Feel yourself as the consciousness that would naturally experience this reality. The key is to observe without attachment or desperation. You're not trying to force anything to happen. You're simply practicing observing from the consciousness that would naturally experience your desired reality. This practice creates coherent patterns in the quantum field that increase the probability of corresponding experiences manifesting. Expectation management. Your expectations are potent forces in creating your reality because they determine how you observe future possibilities. When you expect positive outcomes, you're more likely to notice opportunities and take actions that lead to those outcomes. When you expect adverse consequences, you create the opposite effect. Practice managing your expectations consciously. Instead of hoping for the best while expecting the worst, learn to expect positive outcomes while remaining unattached to specific forms. This creates an optimal state for positive manifestation. You're open to good things happening without being rigid about how they must occur. The collective observer effect. The observer effect doesn't just operate individually, it also functions collectively. When groups of people observe reality from similar states of consciousness, they create collective patterns in the quantum field that influence shared reality. This explains why cultural beliefs and social expectations affect what different societies consider possible or impossible. When a culture collectively believes something is impossible, that collective observation creates quantum field patterns that make it extremely unlikely to occur. When beliefs shift, new possibilities become available. Understanding the collective observer effect reveals the importance of the consciousness you surround yourself with. The people you spend time with, the media you consume, and the cultural narratives you participate in all influence the collective field of observation that shapes your reality. This is why it's essential to be conscious about the information and influences you allow into your awareness. You're not just passively consuming information. You're participating in collective observation patterns that influence what becomes possible in your shared reality. The collective observer effect also explains the power of group meditation, prayer, and intention setting. When groups of people observe reality from aligned states of consciousness, they create coherent patterns in the quantum field that can influence outcomes on a larger scale. The spiritual implications of quantum observation. The observer effect has profound spiritual implications that go beyond practical manifestation techniques. It reveals that consciousness is not separate from the divine creative force of the universe. It is that creative force expressing itself through individual awareness. This understanding transforms the entire concept of spiritual practice. You're not trying to connect with a separate divine power. You're recognizing your nature as the consciousness through which divine creativity expresses itself. Every moment of awareness is a sacred act of creation. The observer effect also reveals the interconnected nature of all consciousness. If consciousness shapes reality at the quantum level, and all consciousness participates in this creative process, then individual and universal consciousness are expressions of the same fundamental creative force. This understanding brings profound responsibility. When you realize that your consciousness actively creates reality, you become responsible for the quality of consciousness you bring to each moment. Every thought, emotion, and observation becomes an ethical choice that affects not just your reality, but the collective reality of all consciousness. The spiritual path becomes a journey of conscious evolution, learning to observe from increasingly refined states of consciousness that create realities aligned with love, wisdom, and the highest good of all beings. Advanced applications, timeline shifting, and parallel realities. Once you understand the basic principles of the observer effect, you can explore more advanced applications like timeline shifting and parallel reality access. While seeming fantastical, these concepts are logical extensions of quantum mechanical principles. If consciousness collapses possibilities into reality through observation, changing your consciousness can shift you into different timelines, sequences of probable events. This isn't science fiction. It's applied quantum mechanics. Timeline shifting occurs when a fundamental shift in consciousness opens up new probability patterns in the quantum field. Instead of continuing your current trajectory, you begin experiencing a different sequence of events that matches your new state of consciousness. The key to timeline shifting is genuine changes in your identity and consciousness, not just your thoughts or desires. When you become a different person at the level of consciousness, you automatically shift into the timeline corresponding to that new identity. Parallel reality access involves recognizing that all possible versions of your life exist simultaneously in the quantum field. Through advanced consciousness practices, you can access these parallel selves' wisdom, experiences, and capabilities, integrating their qualities into your current reality. These advanced applications require a deep understanding of consciousness and extensive practice with basic observer effect principles. They represent the cutting edge of conscious creation technology, the future of consciousness research. The observer effect begins our understanding of how consciousness creates reality. As quantum physics evolves, we discover more profound connections between consciousness and physical reality. Emerging research in quantum biology reveals that quantum effects play essential roles in biological processes like photosynthesis, enzyme function, and possibly even consciousness. This suggests that the observer effect operates in laboratory conditions and throughout living systems. Studies of quantum coherence in microtubules within brain neurons suggest that consciousness may operate through quantum mechanical processes. If this proves true, it would provide a direct physical mechanism for how consciousness influences reality at the quantum level. Research into quantum entanglement and non-locality reveals that consciousness may be fundamentally non-local, not confined to the brain, but distributed throughout the quantum field. This would explain phenomena like remote viewing, telepathy, and non-local consciousness. The future of consciousness research promises to reveal even more profound connections between awareness and reality creation. We're moving toward a scientific understanding of consciousness that validates the most profound insights of ancient wisdom traditions. Understanding the observer effect transforms your entire relationship with life. You're not a passive victim of circumstances or a helpless observer of events happening to you. You're an active participant in the ongoing creation of reality through the creative power of your consciousness. This understanding brings both tremendous opportunity and profound responsibility. As such, every moment of awareness is an opportunity to create reality consciously rather than accidentally. Every thought, emotion, and observation becomes a creative choice that influences what manifests in your experience. The key is to approach this power with wisdom and compassion. The goal isn't to manipulate reality for personal gain, but to create realities that serve the highest good of all consciousness. When you create from love, wisdom, and service, you align with the fundamental creative force of the universe itself. Start by taking responsibility for the quality of consciousness you bring to each moment. Notice how you observe your reality and practice shifting to more empowering perspectives. Develop coherence between your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. Maintain consistent states of consciousness that support your desired outcomes. Remember that mastering conscious creation is a lifelong journey. The observer effect operates whether you know it, but consciously applying these principles requires practice, patience, and dedication. Be gentle with yourself as you learn to wield the creative power of consciousness with wisdom and skill. The ultimate truth of reality creation. The observer effect reveals the ultimate truth about the nature of reality. There is no objective reality independent of consciousness. Reality is a collaborative creation between individual consciousness and the universal field of infinite possibility. You are not separate from the reality you observe. You are the consciousness through which reality observes itself. Your awareness is a unique perspective through which the universe experiences and creates itself. Every moment of consciousness is a sacred act of cosmic creativity. This understanding dissolves the illusion of separation that causes so much suffering. You're not isolated from the universe. You are the universe, temporarily focused through the lens of individual awareness. Your reality and universal reality are expressions of the same fundamental creative consciousness. When you truly understand this, the entire game of life changes. You stop trying to get something from reality and start recognizing yourself as the consciousness through which reality creates itself. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become a conscious participant in the ongoing creation of existence. The observer effect isn't just a scientific phenomenon. It's a revelation of your true nature as a conscious creator. The question isn't whether you create your reality, whether you'll make it consciously or unconsciously, with wisdom or ignorance, from love or fear. The choice is yours, and you make it with every moment of awareness. The universe is waiting to see what reality you'll choose to create through the infinite creative power of your consciousness. If this understanding resonates with your most profound knowledge, if you feel the call to step into your power as a conscious creator, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. We will continue exploring the cutting edge of consciousness research and the practical applications of quantum principles for reality creation. Like this video, if it opens your eyes to the scientific proof that you create your reality, share it with anyone ready to understand their true nature as conscious creators. Together, we're participating in the greatest awakening in human history. recognizing that consciousness is not separate from reality, but the creative force through which reality comes into being. The observer effect has proven that you create your reality through the simple act of conscious observation. The question is, what reality will you choose to make?